Most people training in the gym right now have weak legs. Not because they skip leg day, though plenty of them do, but because the exercises they are choosing when they do show up are not the ones that actually build functional, powerful lower body strength. Leg extensions, leg press with a narrow range of motion, half-rep lunges that never reach depth. These movements have their place, but they are not the foundation. There are 3 exercises, and only 3, that together train every major muscle in your legs, build the kind of strength that transfers to everything else you do, and produce the visible, powerful physique that most people are training for. Everything else is secondary. These 3 are the foundation, and by the end of this video, you will know exactly why. The legs contain the largest and most powerful muscles in the human body. The quadriceps, the 4 muscles on the front of the thigh, can generate more force than any single muscle group. The glutes are the most powerful hip extensors in existence and directly influence your speed, your jump height, your lower back health, and your aesthetic physique from every angle. The hamstrings are the primary decelerators of every athletic movement and one of the most frequently injured muscle groups in sport, precisely because they are so chronically undertrained. The calves carry your entire body weight for every step of your life. This is the most consequential part of your body to train well, and most people are doing it badly. The reason most leg training fails is not a lack of effort, it is a lack of movement pattern coverage. Your lower body needs to be trained through 3 distinct movement patterns to develop completely, and each of those patterns targets a different combination of muscles, a different joint angle, and a different type of functional strength. The 3 patterns are the bilateral squat, the hip hinge, and the unilateral single leg work. Programs that include all 3 produce dramatically superior results to programs that focus on only 1 or 2, because each pattern fills the gaps the others leave. Today's 3 exercises represent the purest, most effective expression of each of those patterns. The squat, in its most fundamental form, for bilateral lower body development. The Romanian deadlift, the most accessible and effective hip hinge for the posterior chain. And the Bulgarian split squat, the single leg movement that most strength coaches consider the most effective leg building exercise in existence, full stop. We are going to go through each one in complete detail. What it trains, why it works, precise form instruction, and a full progression path for both gym and bodyweight training. Let's start with the one that started it all. 1. The squat. The squat is not an exercise. The squat is the most fundamental expression of lower body strength the human body is capable of. Every culture in history, every athletic tradition, every strength and conditioning methodology that has ever existed has built around the squat, because no other movement pattern develops the lower body with the same completeness, the same loading potential, and the same functional carryover to real-world performance. At its core, the squat is a bilateral knee flexion and extension movement performed under load, whether that load is your body weight, a barbell, a pair of dumbbells, or a resistance band. The primary muscles driving the movement are the quadriceps, particularly the vastus medialis, the teardrop-shaped muscle that stabilizes the knee, and the rectus femoris, which crosses both the hip and the knee, and is uniquely challenged by the deep squat position. The glutes, specifically the gluteus maximus, are the primary drivers of hip extension in the ascent from the bottom position. The deeper you squat, the greater the stretch on the gluteus maximus, and the greater its contribution to the upward drive. This is the single most important reason to squat below parallel, not because someone told you that is the right way, but because the glutes produce the most force when they are fully loaded at depth. What the squat fixes beyond building muscle is equally significant. It develops the ankle mobility, hip mobility, and thoracic extension that modern sedentary life systematically destroys. It builds the knee stability that protects against injury in sport and daily life. It develops proprioception, the body's sense of its own position in space through the complex joint coordination the movement demands. And it produces one of the highest systemic hormonal responses of any exercise, a significant release of testosterone and growth hormone that benefits muscle growth across the entire body, not just the legs.
Form, the details that determine everything. Set your feet at shoulder width or slightly wider. toes turned outward between 15 and 30 degrees. The exact angle varies by individual hip anatomy, but a useful rule is to angle the toes to match your knee tracking direction. Wherever your knees naturally want to travel as you descend is where your toes should be pointing. Before you move, brace. Take a deep breath into your belly, not your chest. This is called the Valsalva maneuver, and it creates intra-abdominal pressure that acts as a natural weight belt, protecting your spine under load. Hold that breath and brace through the entire rep for heavy squat work. Exhale at the top between reps. Initiate the descent by simultaneously braking at the hips and the knees. Do not push the knees forward first and then hinge. Both joints should begin moving together. Your torso will incline forward slightly as you descend. This is normal and correct. The degree of forward lean varies with your proportions. Longer femurs require more forward lean. What you must never do is allow the lower back to round. Maintain the natural curve of your spine throughout. Descend until your hip crease, the fold of the hip, drops below the top of your knee. This is parallel. Go below it if your mobility allows. At the bottom, drive through the floor with your entire foot, heel, midfoot, and forefoot all in contact. Think of pushing the floor apart beneath you as you rise. This cue produces the external rotation force that protects the knees and maximizes glute activation throughout the ascent. Squat progression path, gym and bodyweight. Bodyweight beginner, assisted squat. Hold a door frame or suspension strap as a counterbalance while you develop mobility and pattern. 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps. Focus entirely on depth and keeping the chest up. Bodyweight beginner, box squat. Squat to a chair or box set at parallel height. Sit lightly and stand back up under control. Eliminates fear of depth and teaches the correct bottom position. 3 sets of 12 to 15. Bodyweight intermediate, pause squat. Descend to full depth, pause 3 full seconds, then stand. The pause eliminates elastic rebound, forces genuine muscle engagement at the bottom, and reveals every weakness in your positioning. 4 sets of 8 to 12. Bodyweight advanced, single leg squat negative. Stand on one leg and lower yourself as slowly as possible toward a box or chair. The working leg bears the full eccentric load. 3 sets of 5 each leg. Build toward the pistol squat over months of consistent work. Gym beginner, goblet squat. Hold a dumbbell or kettlebell at chest height as a counterweight. The front-loaded position naturally keeps the torso upright and teaches correct depth. 4 sets of 10 to 15 reps. The best first barbell substitute for learning squat mechanics. Gym intermediate, barbell back squat. Bar resting across the upper traps, brace hard and squat below parallel. The gold standard of bilateral lower body loading. 4 sets of 5 to 8 reps for strength, 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps for hypertrophy. Gym advanced, front squat or pause squat with load. The front squat demands greater quad recruitment and upper back strength. The loaded pause squat builds exceptional strength at the weakest position in the range. 3 to 4 sets of 4 to 6 reps. These variations build the squat strength that translates most directly to athletic performance. The squat is a skill as much as an exercise. The first month of squatting is spent learning the pattern. The second month is spent loading it. Every month after that is progressive overload, and the potential ceiling for squat strength development is essentially limitless.
The Romanian deadlift. If the squat is the king of anterior leg development, the Romanian deadlift is the king of the posterior chain, the entire system of muscles running down the back of the body from the base of the skull to the heel. And if there is one movement that most training programs systematically undervalue, this is the one. Most people spend far more training time on the muscles they can see in the mirror than on the muscles they cannot,
and the consequences are visible in posture, in movement quality, in injury rates, and in the flat, underdeveloped physique from behind that tells the story of neglected posterior chain training. The Romanian deadlift, also called the RDL, is a hip hinge movement performed with a barbell, dumbbells, or a resistance band. Starting from a standing position, you hinge forward at the hips with a completely neutral spine. The natural curve of the lower back is maintained and must not flatten or round. And lower the weight along the front of your legs until you feel a deep, significant stretch in your hamstrings. Then you drive the hips forward to return to standing, contracting the glutes maximally at the top. The Romanian deadlift develops the hamstrings in the way they are most often injured, under eccentric load at a long muscle length. Most hamstring strains happen during explosive deceleration. The hamstring is lengthening under high force and it tears because it has never been specifically trained to resist load in that stretched position. The RDL directly trains this exact scenario, a loaded eccentric contraction at full hamstring length, making it one of the most effective hamstring injury prevention exercises in sports science. The glute development from the RDL complements but does not duplicate what the squat produces. The squat loads the glutes most heavily in the shortened, flexed hip position at depth. The RDL loads the glutes most heavily in the lengthened, hinged position, a fundamentally different stimulus that hits different portions of the gluteus maximus and develops a fullness and roundness to the glute that squat training alone cannot replicate. This is why every serious lower body program includes both. They are not redundant, they are complementary. The lower back receives an important training stimulus from the RDL as well, specifically the erector spinae muscles that run alongside the spine and are responsible for maintaining the lumbar extension position throughout the hinge. Training these muscles under load in the hinge position builds the spinal strength and resilience that protects the lower back from the most common cause of back injury, a loaded forward bend with an unprepared posterior chain. Form, the details that determine everything. Stand with feet hip-width apart, barbell or dumbbells held in front of your thighs. Before you hinge, establish your spinal position. Chest tall, shoulder blades retracted and depressed, natural lumbar curve maintained. This is the position you must hold throughout the entire movement. Every centimeter of lower back rounding represents a compromise of both safety and effectiveness. Initiate the hinge by pushing your hips backward, not by bending forward at the waist. The distinction is critical. In a hinge, the hips move backward as the torso inclines forward. The movement is driven from the hips, not from the spine. A useful cue: imagine you are trying to touch the wall behind you with the back of your hips. Keep the weight close to your body throughout the descent. It should travel along the front of your legs, almost grazing the shins as it passes the knee. Descend until you feel a strong, deep stretch in your hamstrings. For most people, this occurs when the torso is roughly parallel to the floor, or slightly above, though hip mobility and hamstring flexibility determine the exact range. Never chase a deeper range by rounding the lower back. The range ends where your neutral spine ends. From the stretched position, drive the hips forward by squeezing the glutes. Do not think of the movement as standing up, think of it as driving the hips through to full extension. At the top, stand completely tall with hips fully extended and glutes contracted hard. That full hip extension at the top is non-negotiable. Stopping short leaves the most important part of the glute contraction untrained. RDL progression path, gym and bodyweight. Bodyweight beginner. Good morning. Stand with hands behind your head and perform the hip hinge with no external load. 3 sets of 15 reps. The primary goal is learning to distinguish a hip hinge from a forward bend. This distinction changes everything downstream. Bodyweight intermediate. Single leg good morning. Stand on one leg and hinge at the hip, extending the free leg behind you as a counterbalance. Demands balance, hip stability, and hamstring strength simultaneously. 3 sets of 10 each leg. Bodyweight advanced, Nordic curl. The highest EMG hamstring exercise ever recorded. Kneel on a pad, Anchor your feet under something heavy and lower your body toward the floor over 5 to 8 seconds using only hamstring control. Catch yourself at the bottom and return. 3 sets of 5 to 8. Build up the eccentric strength gradually. This exercise is significantly harder than it appears.
Gym beginner. Dumbbell RDL. Dumbbells are more forgiving than a barbell for learning the hinge pattern because they allow each hand to move independently. 4 sets of 10 to 12 reps. Focus on the stretch sensation over the weight used. Gym intermediate. Barbell Romanian deadlift. The barbell adds loading potential and demands more thoracic and lumbar stability. 4 sets of 6 to 10 reps. This is the primary hamstring and glute developer in the majority of serious programs. Gym advanced. Single leg Romanian deadlift with load. 1 leg, 1 dumbbell or kettlebell in the opposite hand. Full hip hinge to the floor and back. Builds unilateral posterior chain strength and exposes imbalances between sides that bilateral training masks completely. 3 sets of 8 to 10 each leg. The RDL is the most direct path to hamstrings that look developed from the back and function at the level they are visually suggesting. Train it with the same seriousness as the squat. Your lower back, your glutes, your hamstrings, and your injury statistics will all reflect it. Chapter 3. The Bulgarian Split Squat. The Bulgarian split squat is the most uncomfortable exercise on this list. It is also, in the opinion of many of the most respected strength coaches on the planet, the single most effective leg-building exercise in existence, more effective rep for rep than the bilateral squat. It is hated by almost everyone who trains it. It is used by almost everyone who takes their leg development seriously. And it delivers results that nothing else in the gym replicates. The Bulgarian split squat is a rear foot elevated split squat, a single leg squatting movement where the back foot rests on an elevated surface such as a bench, a box, or a chair, while the front foot bears the primary load. This setup creates an extraordinary loading environment for the front leg. The rear foot elevated essentially removes the rear leg's contribution to the movement, forcing the front quad, glute, and hamstring to work near unilaterally under the full weight of the body plus any external load you choose to add. Why is single leg training so important? Because every form of human locomotion, walking, running, climbing, jumping, is fundamentally single leg. At any given moment during gait, your entire body weight is being managed by one leg. The bilateral squat builds strength in a position that humans rarely use outside of lifting. The Bulgarian split squat builds strength in the pattern humans use for everything. This functional carryover is the reason athletic performance coaches often prioritize it over the back squat, because the strength transfers more directly to what athletes actually need to do. There is also an injury prevention argument for single leg work that is compelling for anyone who trains seriously. Bilateral exercises, squats, deadlifts, leg press, allow the dominant leg to compensate for the weaker one without either of you noticing. Strength imbalances between limbs accumulate silently in bilateral training until they are significant enough to cause an asymmetric injury. Single leg training forces each limb to produce its own strength independently, surfaces imbalances immediately, and addresses them automatically by giving each leg the same workload. Athletes who include regular single-leg work have measurably lower rates of knee and hip injuries than those who train exclusively bilaterally. The quadricep development from the Bulgarian split squat is particularly notable because the elevated rear foot tilts the pelvis into an anteriorly rotated position at the top of the movement. This means the rectus femoris, the quad muscle that crosses the hip, is under stretch at the hip while simultaneously contracting at the knee. This dual demand produces an extraordinary training stimulus for the rectus femoris that the bilateral squat does not replicate. And it is why people who commit to the Bulgarian split squat consistently report quad development that exceeds what their bilateral squat training ever produced.
Form, the details that determine everything. Set up with a bench or elevated surface approximately knee height behind you. Stand far enough forward that when you lower into the bottom position, your front shin is close to vertical, not pitched dramatically forward over the toes. Finding this starting foot position requires experimentation and will vary by leg length, but it is worth taking the time to get right before adding any load. Place the top of your rear foot on the bench, not the toes, the top of the foot, with the ankle in plantar flexion. Some people prefer the toes on the bench for knee comfort. Experiment with both. The rear foot is not a weight-bearing surface. It is purely there for balance. Do not push into it. Descend by lowering your rear knee toward the floor. Your front knee tracks over your front foot throughout the descent. Do not let it cave inward. Lower until your front thigh is parallel to the floor or below. The deeper the range, the greater the glute loading. Your torso will lean forward slightly. This is normal. A more upright torso emphasizes the quads. A slightly more inclined torso emphasizes the glutes. Both are valid positions for different training goals. Drive back to standing by pressing through the full foot of the front leg, heel and midfoot both in contact with the floor. Squeeze the glute of the front leg at the top. Stand completely tall before beginning the next rep. The entire load on the ascent should feel like it is coming from the front leg alone, because it is. Bulgarian split squat progression path. Absolute beginner, body weight split squat, no elevation. Both feet on the floor, split stance, rear knee lowering toward the ground. This teaches the movement pattern and builds the single leg balance before the added instability of rear foot elevation. 3 sets of 10 to 12 reps each leg. Beginner, Bulgarian split squat, body weight. Rear foot elevated, body weight only, focus entirely on depth and balance. 3 sets of 8 to 10 reps each leg. If balance is a limiting factor, hold a wall lightly with one hand until you are comfortable without support. Intermediate, dumbbell split squat. Hold a dumbbell in each hand at your sides. The added load removes the reliance on balance and forces pure leg strength. 4 sets of 8 to 10 reps each leg. This is the version most people will train for the majority of their fitness journey, and it produces extraordinary results at any weight used. Intermediate, pause Bulgarian split squat. Add a 2 to 3 second pause at the bottom of each rep. The pause eliminates the stretch reflex and forces the muscles to generate full concentric force from a dead stop. This technique variation adds significant difficulty to any weight used. 3 sets of 6 to 8 reps each leg. Advanced, barbell Bulgarian split squat. Barbell across the upper back, same movement. The loading potential is dramatically higher, and the demand on the core and upper back to maintain position is significant. 3 to 4 sets of 5 to 8 reps each leg. Elite, deficit Bulgarian split squat. Front foot elevated on a small plate or step, adding depth beyond floor level. The increased range of motion produces the highest possible glute and quad loading of any squat variation available. 3 sets of 6 to 8 reps each leg. The Bulgarian split squat is uncomfortable because it is honest. It cannot be performed with momentum. It cannot be performed with compensations. Every rep requires your front leg to produce every newton of force on its own. That honesty is exactly what makes it irreplaceable. How to combine all 3 into a complete leg program. 3 exercises, 3 movement patterns, every major muscle in your legs covered. Now, let me show you how to assemble them into a training session that delivers maximum results without unnecessary complexity. Sequence matters. Always begin your session with the squat. The squat is the most technically demanding of the 3 movements and requires the highest neuromuscular output. Performing it when your nervous system is fresh, before any fatigue has accumulated, means you can load it maximally and execute every rep with full quality.
Starting with the Romanian deadlift or Bulgarian split squat first, and then attempting heavy squats is a reliable way to compromise both your form and your results. After the squat, move to the Romanian deadlift. By this point, the quads have been worked significantly, and the posterior chain is warmed up from the hip extension component of the squat ascent. The RDL now targets the hamstrings and glutes from a completely different angle, the hip hinge, and the muscles you are about to train are not the ones that just worked hardest in the squat. This sequencing minimizes interference between exercises and maximizes the quality of each session. Finish with the Bulgarian split squat. This exercise is programmed last, not because it is least important, but because it is the most uncomfortable, requires the most mental focus to execute cleanly, and finishes the session with single leg work that addresses every imbalance and gap left by the bilateral work that preceded it. Ending on Bulgarian split squats means finishing the session when the legs are already fatigued from bilateral work, which increases the relative intensity of the single leg demand and produces a training stimulus that fresh muscle split squats cannot fully replicate. For sets and reps, the structure that produces the best combination of strength and hypertrophy across all three exercises is as follows. Squat, 4 sets of 5 to 8 reps for strength, or 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps for muscle. Romanian deadlift, 4 sets of 8 to 10 reps. This movement benefits from slightly higher rep ranges because the eccentric loading is the primary stimulus. Bulgarian split squat, 3 sets of 8 to 12 reps each leg, performed with complete control, full depth, and no rushing between legs. Train this session twice per week. Your legs are large and powerful. They can handle and benefit from twice weekly loading more than most people give them credit. Separate the 2 sessions by at least 72 hours to allow full recovery of the hamstrings and quads. Monday and Thursday work very well. Tuesday and Friday work equally well. What does not work is training legs on back-to-back days and wondering why the second session feels terrible. The truth about leg training most people never reach. There is a threshold in lower body training that separates the people who have genuinely developed legs from everyone else. And it is not a genetic threshold. It is a consistency threshold. Building powerful, developed legs takes longer than building an upper body. The muscles are larger, the loading requirements are higher, the sessions are more physically and psychologically demanding, and the results take longer to become visually apparent because the changes are distributed across the largest muscle groups in your body. People who develop impressive legs are simply the people who refused to stop when the progress was slow and the sessions were hard. The 3 exercises in this video are everything you need, not 3 out of 10, not a starting point that eventually requires expansion. The squat, the Romanian deadlift, and the Bulgarian split squat, progressively loaded over 12 months of consistent training, will produce lower body strength and development that most people in any gym cannot match. The program is simple. Executing it with honesty over time is the entire challenge. 3 exercises. That is all this ever needed to be. The squat, the foundational bilateral pattern that builds the quads, activates the glutes at depth, develops ankle and hip mobility, and produces the systemic hormonal response that raises the entire body. The Romanian deadlift, the hip hinge that builds the hamstrings through their full range, develops the glutes from behind, and protects the lower back and the posterior chain from injury for life. The Bulgarian split squat, the single leg movement that builds unilateral strength, corrects imbalances, develops the quad in its most demanding position, and delivers the honest reckoning with each leg that bilateral training never forces. These 3 movements together cover every major muscle in your lower body through every major movement pattern. They work with a barbell, they work with dumbbells, they work with nothing but your body weight. They work in a commercial gym, a garage, a park, or a bedroom, and they keep working because each one has progressions that will challenge you for years. Subscribe to the Fit Pulse for more content that strips fitness back to what actually matters and gives you the science behind why it works. And if you found this video valuable, share it. Leg Day needs more defenders.
See you in the next one.